Hey, this is Kip Weston. I've had a lifelong fascination with adventure. I'm obsessed with uncovering stories from extraordinary people. People who break from the average and become outliers. And I want to share their stories with you. This episode, I'm speaking with Stevie, aka Stevie Wanders on Instagram. She's a PADI certified dive master and freediver who frequently swims with sharks. In our conversation, we cover how Stevie quite literally jumped into the deep end, how her fascination with sharks began, and what it's grown into now. I really enjoyed this conversation and loved hearing Stevie's passion for the underwater world. So let's get into it. Stevie, I am so excited to talk to you. We have a shared passion for like everything underwater, and you do just about every hobby.
Yes, I'm so excited to talk to you too. I don't know if you can tell, I'm smiling ear to ear today. It's my favorite subject to talk about.
It's an interesting thing to talk about because it's really tough to describe to people, I think, who haven't been scuba diving or free diving, what the experience is like underwater.
You
It's
are spot on.
Yeah, how did you get involved in either of those hobbies?
That's a really good question. You would think it would stem from my childhood. My dad has been diving since the 80s. He has had me on a boat before I can walk. So the big joke in my family is that I got my sea legs before my land legs. However, I had a fear of sharks and open water in general from a very young age that stemmed from Jaws. I'm sure other people are with me there. And it wasn't actually until very recently that I kind of opened up my mind, wanted to really face that fear, and with a gentle push from a loving partner, was able to conquer it head on. Ended up doing my open water dive certification. Somewhat against my will, and the rest is history. So in seeing other people's underwater photographs after that, I just knew I kind of wanted to share the same excitement and the same feeling that I got when I was finally ready to face that fear and get underwater with the rest of the world.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And where did you grow up?
So I actually grew up from a very young age in Maryland. So my dad had a boat in the Annapolis area, which was super, super fun. And then I spent most of my childhood actually on the west coast of Florida in St. Petersburg. We moved when I was in 6th grade, I believe.
Oh, nice. And was your dad trying to push you to get your open water cert?
Surprisingly not. He never pushed that on us, even though it was a great passion of his. But I remember when I was a kid just seeing pictures of him hand feeding sharks on the wall and things like that. And I thought it was absolutely insane. At the time was never something where I was like, I want to go there and do that. But, just over time and like I said, that little push to face that fear, I just fell in love with it.
Oh my gosh. My family has a thing called the no thank you bite for new foods, where you like have to try it, but if you don't like it, you can say no thank you to the next bite.
I love that.
I feel like that's how almost you're describing your entry into the scuba diving world, where you're like, I really didn't know about it, but I had to try it because someone made me do it.
You're spot on. Someone kind of forced me to do it and face the fear. And then once I did it, I was like, yes, please more instead of you.
Yeah. How did that work? Did you just do one of those like Discover Scuba?
Good question. Yes. So it started with me sharing with my boyfriend. He's still my current partner now, 7 years later. But gosh, it was probably about 5 years ago. And I shared with him, we were talking, just about our fears in life and things like that. And I said, it's shocking because I lived so long in Florida and so much of my life on the water, but I'm actually terrified of open water and I'm terrified of sharks. And then that Christmas, I got my open water scuba certification for a Christmas gift. I was less than thrilled, but he said he would do it with me. So I was like, fine. Peer pressure, I'll just do it to appease him, and that's that. And he said, I'm going to book us a dive trip for Belize afterwards, so that way I can really show you. He was already scuba certified, so he really wanted to show me, the beauty of the underwater world. And the rest is history from there.
Oh my gosh. How nervous were you going into that trip?
Extremely, extremely. And in fact, on that trip in Belize, I would say it was one of my most memorable dives and one of the turning points for me with my love of sharks, and where that kind of flipped from a fear into a fascination was not only did he sign me up for the open water dive, and we did our dive trip in Belize. I'm shaking like a leaf because I'm anxious. And he didn't tell me he signed us up for a shark dive as our first dive.
Your
So,
first dive?
first dive, we're tackling two fears in one. And at the time, I did want to kill him a little bit, but now I'm so grateful. You know, I was just thinking to myself at the time, like, all right, if we're going to go on this shark dive, maybe I'll just feed him to the sharks or something. I don't know. But it ended up being such a turning point for me and so pivotal because during this shark dive, I saw, it was mostly nurse sharks, which are gentle. They're like, if I had to put a dog breed to it, maybe like the golden retrievers of the sea, like very friendly, gentle, don't typically bite humans or anything like that. However, I didn't know the difference between a nurse shark and a great white shark. So I am just seeing the shark come at me. I'm down probably at 60 feet. It's swimming towards me. My response in the flight, fight, or freeze is freeze. So I am just still in fear, like watching my life flash before my eyes as this shark is swimming towards me. And then it just kind of brushes up against me, almost like a dog would, and swim right past me. And in that moment, I realized, okay, the shark doesn't want to eat me. It doesn't want to hurt me. And that was actually kind of adorable. And so that kind of just opened my mind a little bit. And I got very, very curious from there. So I went home that same night and we went back to the hotel that same night.
Yeah.
And I just started Googling shark facts. And that's when I started to really like learn a lot about them and how much help they need and things like that, that they're really not as dangerous as I thought they were. I'm not going to jump in the water and get eaten, which is what I thought would happen prior. So that was just a huge, huge turning point for me.
Oh my gosh. I've had similar experiences to that story. That's I can 100% relate to that. One of my first dives, I think it was the same kind of sharks.
Yeah.
And I burned through oxygen as fast, like twice as fast as everyone else on the dive. I think everyone else had to call it short because of me.
Me too. We would have been really good buddies in that circumstance. We could have just flown up to the surface.
Yeah.
Out of air.
Like 2-second safety stop. Like, all right, we're done.
We're good.
It's so funny to hear like how much of a 180 you've done, because now you have 9 certs total in diving, and you're a shark researcher and advocate.
Yes, absolutely. And it's crazy. I credit obviously my boyfriend largely to that, but also there's wonderful organizations out there like Project Hugh, Ocean Ramsey and One Ocean Diving do a lot of great work with sharks and just educating the general public. So I've learned a lot of my information and my knowledge from there. And I actually had the pleasure of meeting Madison, who founded Project Hugh recently, and getting in the water with her and some sharks. Her foundation is based out of Indonesia, but she was actually in Jupiter, Florida. Her boyfriend Tanner owns a wonderful shark diving operation out of there. So she was in town and I got to pick her brain a little bit, talk about some things that she has in the works. But definitely people like that have been just inspiration and heroes to me, and really the reason why I'm working towards what I'm working towards.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you talk more about maybe the transition from just being, okay, I have my open water cert, which I would say you need to be a casual diver.
Yeah.
And then stepping it up to saying, okay, now I want to get all these other certifications.
Absolutely. So I'll talk a little bit about just my experience as well as some of the differences between the two. So it really all started, like I said, after that dive. It was just such a pivotal moment for me. I knew I just kind of had that spark ignited in my soul from there, and just became so passionate about sharks, conservation, learning as much as I can about the underwater world, which prompted me to continue getting certifications. And right now I'm in Colorado, but I do split my time between Colorado and Florida. However, that's a very recent thing. I was previously just landlocked. And so building on my knowledge and getting those certifications was really just a fun way for me to stay connected to the ocean. I was really like hungry to learn and just continue to expand my knowledge and learn as much as I can, so that when I could get back in the water, I was ready to go. I was confident and I knew as much information as I could. With the transition from open water and being like a recreational diver to dive master, it's very different in terms of a lot of things. It changes your perception a lot, in terms of confidence, but also what you see. And what I mean by that is, when you're an open water diver or a recreational diver, your field of view is very narrow. So you maybe are hyper focused on a fish or something beautiful that the dive master points out to you. But when you're in that dive master role, you have a broader scope of what's going on around you. You're making sure everyone has good trim, we're not damaging the reef, we're being respectful to wildlife, everyone's safe, following good protocol, also minding maybe there's a ray over there and a fish over here and a shark over there. So just kind of having your head on a swivel at all times. It's given me a very different perspective, and it's fun to kind of jump back into that recreational open water dive role from time to time and be almost like a student, go on a dive with another dive master and pretend I'm more of a novice. It's just fun to kind of jump back.
Give them that mental weight, like, you take care of all those other things.
Yes, I want to focus on the pretty fish today.
Yeah. I feel like a little gooseling or a little duck following my guide. When we go there, I'm like, I'll just follow you. I don't know where we're going.
Exactly. Yes. And to your point too, keeping track of navigation. Am I going the right way? Are we going to get back to our starting point?
Yeah. Because I think people may not know how disorienting the water can be.
So disorienting. And if you're not in crystal clear Caribbean waters, even more so, right?
Yes. Yeah. 100% agree. There's a weird feeling I get back to the sharks where on land, you might not even know it, but you have some sort of innate confidence that you're the apex predator on land, and I can walk around with confidence. And then it's weird when you go underwater and you see a fish bigger than you, and your reactions are so slowed from the water. Like, oh, I'm really not top dog anymore in this environment.
It's very humbling.
Totally, yeah. And so I could see, I could empathize with how the fear of sharks and everything comes about. But it's cool that you were able to take that fear and pivot it into an appreciation for them. What were some of the biggest misconceptions your research dissuaded you from believing?
That is a very awesome question. I'm so glad you asked me this, because this is what I like to talk about. I would say the most when people ask me about sharks, they'll come to me with, well, aren't you scared? Aren't you scared you're going to see a shark? Aren't you scared you're going to get eaten? Obviously, novice Stevie, who hadn't been in the water with sharks, would have said abso-freaking-lutely. But me now, I tell people, no, I'd be so lucky to see a shark underwater. One of the misconceptions, I'd say probably the most common misconception, something we got from the media sensationalizing stories and from movies like Jaws and Sharknado and all kinds of crazy things, is that sharks are man-eating monsters, right? That's what we've been told for centuries. We just have this innate fear of them. And again, a lot of that is from the media. So when we can separate ourselves from that and look at just the facts, you can see that sharks are actually in trouble, and sharks are not the man-eating monsters we portray them to be. In fact, to the sharks, we're the monsters. If you look at the statistics, there are less than 10 human fatalities globally from shark attacks. However, when you compare that to how many attacks or deaths on sharks there are from humans, it's upwards of 100 million a year. That's a huge number.
Whoa.
Right? Yes, it's
I didn't know there
shocking.
were that many. That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? And when you think about that number on an annual scale, it took my breath away where I was like, there's no way, same as you, of like, are there that many sharks? What, how is that happening? But then it makes sense when you realize since the 1970s, there's over 70% of global shark populations have declined. So this is a very new thing. And sharks are actually older than trees. So they are evolutionary masterpieces. They have survived, I think it's 3 mass extinctions. They've survived more than 1 mass extinction event. We really, really need them for the health of the ecosystem. And again, when you look at the stats, it's hilarious to me. Some of my favorite ones are ways you're more likely to die than from a shark, right? So getting hit in the head with a coconut, you're more likely to die from than a shark. Having a vending machine fall on you. And my personal favorite, a flying champagne cork. And so when you
What? Oh my gosh. So you're like almost more at risk at a wedding.
when you look at the stats, it's funny to me how scared I was and how scared many people are to still be in the water with them, to be in their presence, to hear about a shark or a shark sighting. It freaks people out. But when you really look at the numbers, if you're not going to stay away from weddings or you're not going to stop going to tropical destinations with coconut trees, then you shouldn't stay out of the ocean. I think it's more just arming yourself with the knowledge you need, learning about shark behavior, when a shark maybe is feeling a little territorial and it's time to get out of the water, things like that. Or making sure you're with a reputable operation like Tanner's operation we mentioned. There's so many, and my DMs are always open if you need recommendations. But I feel like another big shark myth, if you will, or misconception is blood, right? We've all been told like, oh, don't get in the water if you have a cut or if you're bleeding, or, for us, the ladies, if it's that time of month. That's totally a myth. Sharks can smell your blood. They can detect that there's blood in the water, but fascinatingly, they can actually tell the difference between our blood and fish blood or something that they might want to eat. So I have actually had a cut. I have been fully bleeding around sharks, no interest. So I have actually proven that for myself and for all of you. But
The Mythbusters.
Mythbusters. I went in there and did it.
Yeah.
But, it's really, really fascinating. So the analogy I like to use is, if you were to smell a candle versus a hamburger, you can obviously detect both scents, but one smells like something you want to eat. The other one smells fine, but you don't really want to eat it. So that's kind of the analogy I like to use when it comes to our blood versus if you're chumming in the water with a lot of fish guts and fish blood, you will see the sharks be interested.
You just blew my mind, I think 7 times over. Those are the wildest statistics. I mean, some are very cool and some are very sad, but
Yeah.
all of them are way higher and more impactful than I thought.
Yes, and that's exactly, I had the same reaction as you when I was reading these over and just learning and reading up on sharks and things like that. And I had the same exact reaction of, holy cow, I didn't realize any of this. And I don't think anyone else is realizing this, or at least most people aren't. And the more people that I can make aware of this, hopefully the greater impact we'll have on things like, banning shark fishing or having it be more regulated, things like that.
Yeah, totally. Could you talk more about like broader conservation efforts you're involved in?
Absolutely, absolutely. So a lot of the conservation that I am doing right now, I would say mostly is through my own social media. And like I said, bringing awareness through photographs, through reposting and things like that. I always love to donate signed petitions when I can. We also do a lot of like beach cleanups and greater conservation efforts when it comes to the ocean with a wonderful company that I'm a part of called Live Freediving. It was started by Kiki and Farrell. They're such a wonderful couple down in West Palm Beach. That's actually who I do the dive mastering for. We do women's events, we do retreats, things like that. But we also are really involved in giving back, and that's doing things like beach cleanups, reef cleanups, just bringing the community together in ways that we can help. And something that everyone can do at home to help would be almost equally as important as the shark issue is the plastic issue. So right now, another fun / scary fact for you is that they are projecting by 2050, we're going to have more plastic in the ocean than fish, which is a very scary, scary thought. Even though it seems far away, it's really not that far away. And something that you can do to make a difference at home is just reducing single-use plastics. Obviously, practice what I preach. It's very hard to completely eliminate single-use plastics, but reducing as much of it as you can, and really knowing where your seafood is coming from if you're a seafood eater. A lot of the stats I mentioned when it comes to sharks are also from the commercial fishing industry, using unsafe practices, big nets that are scooping up everything as a bycatch, which are things like dolphins, sharks, rays, whales, things like that that get stuck in these nets and they die. So that's a big problem as well.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for walking me through that. I think one of the disconnects for maybe the general public might be that feels over there. It's in the
Yeah,
water. It's not in my world. But the plastic one to me is especially concerning because the fish we eat that, eat the
you're
plastic, and
spot
then
on.
it becomes we're eating that. So it is to the audience like this isn't two separate worlds. They are connected.
They're absolutely connected. And everything that happens from within the ocean also impacts us. So like the trash, like the fishing, like the potential to lose sharks in our lifetime, coral bleaching. These are all huge pieces in a part of a bigger picture. So we need the ocean. That's where we get our oxygen from, a lot of our oxygen from. It's where, we get our food from. If the ocean is unhealthy or the ocean is non-existent, we are non-existent. So we truly, truly need this and rely on it for so, so many reasons.
Yeah. How has your relationship with the ocean changed as you've grown up? Like you grew up near the water, but you didn't go in it too much, it sounds like, or at least underwater for extended periods of time. How have you thought about your personal and like our greater relationship as a people with the ocean?
That's a really, really great question. To your point, I completely took the ocean for granted before. I thought it's always going to be there. It's just a little body of water, and the beach is the place I go, right?
Right.
That's how I
Yeah.
used to look at it, of like, I'm going
Get
to
your
the,
boogie board in.
yeah, get my boogie board in, exactly. Maybe get a little suntan, have a cocktail, but it was just like, oh, it's there, basically, right? And I thought it would always be there. But as I dove, pun intended, deeper into the underwater world, I realized not only is this significantly more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. Like you've seen it with your own eyes. It's the closest thing I think that we have to outer space that's on our planet. It's very cool. There's alien-like creatures. There's lots of colors. It's very cool. It's beautiful. There's so much to see. And when you fall in love with something, you really want to protect it. And that's kind of what happened to me. I just instantly fell head over heels once I got underneath the surface. And I was just really, really driven and motivated to protect it. So now I view the ocean completely differently. Every time I go in, I feel like I'm taking notes of what's changed, which is really sad because as you start to notice, you also notice the decline, where if you're diving the same spots over and over again, the reef doesn't quite look the same anymore. The one fish that we always saw every time isn't hanging around here anymore. Like you see a lot of sad change, but that also kind of prompts you to spring into action and do something about it. Because again, when you love something, you want to protect it. So I view it more as a necessity, not just something to completely take advantage of. And I'd say I have a deeper and profound gratitude for it, where every little fish in the ocean has their place. Every shark, every sea creature has their place in this bigger ecosystem. And it just really drives me to want to protect all of it.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Stevie, I want to give people what they want. I want to talk Frenzel versus Vulsulva equalizing.
No, but that's my biggest struggle. Yes, that's so funny you say that. Yes, I'm actually very new to freediving. I've been scuba diving for a couple of years, and I still struggle with Frenzel versus Vulsulva, which everyone is probably like, what the heck language are you speaking?
Yeah. Like both of these aren't real words. When you hear those words, you're like, this is made up.
They both make up this. They knew what they were talking about, but they're totally made up words. It sounds like it, right? That was a huge challenge for me. As you know, being a diver, there's different ways to equalize, and I actually wasn't aware of that until I started my level 1 freediving course. So it's very different when it comes to the equalization. It's something I'm still working on perfecting for freediving. So for freediving, you use the Frenzel method.
Sorry to interrupt. So for equalizing, it's like if you're in a picture being in an airplane, right?
Yes.
And you've got pressure in your ears. How do you fight that pressure back?
Right.
So most people are familiar with pinching your nose and pushing.
Yep. Or doing the yawn or something like that. If you're on an airplane, chewing the gum or something, you're spot on.
Yeah.
Yes. So equalizing is, like you said, how to remove those air pockets, how to clear your ears. So in scuba, we are typically right side up. I almost just yawned. And so you're pinching your nose and you're forcefully blowing. Now, I quickly learned this does not work well for freediving at depth. You can probably fudge it, like me, to about 15 feet before you get really uncomfortable. And that's because the body positioning is totally different. So when you're on scuba, you're typically either right side up or horizontal, buoyant, as we like to call it, neutral buoyant.
The whole world of vocabulary.
It's so much to teach you. But when you're free diving, you're doing what you call a duck dive at the surface. So you're kind of in a snorkel position at the surface, and then you're actually going head first, and your body is totally vertical, going down head first. So equalizing does not work the same. You actually need to equalize completely different. Now, again, this is something I'm still working on mastering, but it's more closing your throat and directing the airflow up. So it's you use your little tongue as a piston, and I'm still working on mastering that. It's quite complex, but if you have Frenzel down, rock on. Like that, I would say for me is the hardest part of free diving. And I think it's because I started with scuba. I find a lot of divers who start with free diving learn Frenzel a little quicker. I think for me, it's such muscle memory wanting to equalize Vulsulva. So definitely a difference. Yeah.
I get that. And then they'll show you diagrams like, just do this. And it's I'm like, I don't know what that means. There's arrows everywhere in my nasal cavity. What's going on?
You're like, just do that. Just do what? Do
Yeah. What prompted you to get into freediving?
Great question. I wanted the skills that it would give me. So free diving is a mental sport, they say, and it's very true. It's all mind games. I really wanted to face another fear, which is I get really uncomfortable holding my breath. I'm super claustrophobic. Very uncomfortable feeling for me. So I wanted to conquer that a little bit, but I also love that it teaches you calmness, stillness, how to control, lowering your heart rate and really focusing from within. And finding that courage to push through even when it's uncomfortable, that's what I wanted to master. So that's kind of what prompted me to do my level 1 freediving course. And that's how I got connected with Live Freediving out of West Palm Beach. They did my level 1 freediving course. I absolutely fell in love with them, fell in love with the way they teach, their operation, the skills I've learned, and I knew I had to work for them. So
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I get that. Were you always into, I don't want to say meditation, but things that would calm you and lower your pulse and focus on breathing?
I would say it's more the recent thing. I noticed as I've kind of climbed the corporate ladder and on the 9 to 5 side of things, a lot more stressed out, a lot more anxiety provoking days and things like that. So more recently, I'd say within the past 2 or 3 years, got into more like yoga, meditation, things like that. So you're spot on. Most recently, I've discovered breath work, which has helped tremendously as well. And it all kind of feeds into that same idea of control, of stillness, and overall wellness. So I love it.
Yeah. I remember after I took a freediving class and suddenly became a breathing snob. It's like, oh, I'm breathing out of my mouth. Oh, this isn't appropriate. My respiratory rate's too high. I'm like, oh, this is crazy. It's so funny.
I noticed that too. I'll pick up on little things too. Like, whoa, I'm not taking as deep breaths as I should be right now. It's shallow breathing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny. How is the experience of freediving different from scuba diving for you?
For me, it's completely different. I would say with scuba, I'm more focused on external and what's around me. When I am doing a breath hold or a free dive, I'm more focused internally. So it's a little tougher for me because I love to see, focus on the turtle and the fish and all of that. So for me, scuba is more preferable for spending more time down there. But when I really want to like deeply meditate or disconnect, I far prefer a free dive. If I've had a really tough day and I really just need to calm it down and go more look within, that's when I would go on a free dive. But definitely want to continue to improve that breath hold on free dive and continue to work towards leveling up in that regard, because I think I will eventually be able to draw my awareness more externally. But right now, that's kind of the key difference is internal versus external.
Is that what you were referring to earlier with guiding, where casual divers just focused on the fishies and following the guide, and the guide has to worry about everything else?
Yes, exactly.
I love that distinction. I've never thought about that.
It's kind of like looking at your field of view and you're like, oh, when you're like an open water diver and you're just seeing the fish, and then the diver's like, oh, I see it all.
Kind of reminds me of like a mom driving the minivan. You got to do the road and the kids in the back are throwing things and
kids are just focused on throwing things at each other.
Yeah. Have you had any spooky underwater experiences beyond the first shark encounter?
Great question. I have had a spooky experience. Well, I've had a couple. I've had 2 that have happened to me where I've been on a dive, not the dive master, and separated from the group. That really kind of puts you in your place, one of which was on a night dive. So that was a little spooky. You really have to remember and think like, okay, what is safety protocol for when I get separated from the group? Okay, I'm gonna look around for a minute, then I'm going to slowly start my ascent. If not, and I was super disoriented. That was really spooky, but ended up okay both times. But I also saw something pretty scary on a shark dive. Again, not a dive I was guiding, a dive that I was just a guest on. Super reputable, wonderful operation. But they had a guest that I think just kind of emphasizes the importance of, hey, these are apex predators. They're very capable apex predators. So you have to have a healthy respect. You don't have to fear them, but be aware, certainly. There was a gentleman on one of the shark dives I was on that was very concerned with filming his YouTube video. And that was pretty much it. Not very concerned with shark behavior, awareness, things like that. And there were a couple of times where he did not follow protocol from the safety briefing, would dive down unprompted, dive right onto a shark. And one time the safety diver had to completely interfere, and I believe saved this gentleman from getting bit because he was down, and I'll never forget it. He was like taking a selfie with the sharks and had his arm just kind of dangling out in the abyss, and a shark came from behind to investigate, and the safety diver swooped in right in the nick of time to redirect the shark.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to see his arm get bit off because simply he just was not following the rules, did not listen to any of the safety protocol, and just kind of did his own thing. So it was a humbling experience and a friendly reminder to still be aware. And while they likely are not going to attack, bite, or hurt you in any way, definitely follow the rules and know that they are apex predators that are very capable.
Oh my gosh, those were great stories.
Thank you.
What advice would you give to someone who's maybe in your shoes, who is nervous about getting into the water, and especially nervous as sharks? Like, where would be a good place for them to start?
That's a really great question. You can come do a Discover Scuba with me at Live Freediving anytime. But you can also get in the water and see these sharks in their natural environment without having a dive certification. So Tanner's operation I mentioned, he'll take guests out snorkeling. So you can stay right up at the top of the surface. You're holding on a line. It's a very safe environment. If you want to dive down, they'll let you do so safely, one at a time. But you can stay up on the line snorkeling the entire time. You have safety divers around you watching your back. It's a very calming experience to just get in the water and observe them as they are. You can also, in a lot of those shark dives, stay on the boat. So you can pay a cheaper fare to observe the sharks from the surface. So if you're curious, but you're not quite ready to get your feet wet, you can always be an observer. You can watch the people dive with the sharks. And I think it's just, for me at least, once you kind of experience something for how it actually is versus the way people or the media is portraying it to be, it's going to change your perception. So I think the best way is just to either get in the water or view these creatures in their natural habitat, even if that means, going to an aquarium or something like that. Just the more you can learn about them and educate yourself and about the ocean in general, to all of our points earlier with how much help it really does need and across the board, the more you can just kind of immerse yourself in that and share with your friends, share with your family. You don't have to carry a picket sign or be a whistleblower or anything like that. Still, you can make a difference just by sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, 100% agree. Could you talk to me about how you got into guiding?
Absolutely. So it started because my dream after watching Madison, after watching Ocean Ramsey, I wanted to be a shark safety diver. I wanted to be underwater showing people sharks firsthand and saying like, see, here they are in their natural environment. And so I got this Divermaster rating without really a plan in place. I was just like, when the day comes that I quit my corporate job and become a shark diver, I'll have that rating. But like I said, when I met Kiki and Farrell with Live Freediving, we just absolutely fell in love, and they were actually hiring for a dive master. So I had that rating, and they needed someone to lead scuba tours at Blue Heron Bridge, which if you haven't been, it's on the east coast of Florida. It's actually one of the top snorkel and scuba sites around the world, which is amazing. I could be wrong. It could just be in the US, but it's a great dive site. And it's a shore dive, which is great. So I applied for this job and started guiding, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I love sharing the joy and the excitement of the other underwater world with others. I think innately I'm meant to be a teacher of sorts, and I love being able to teach people in that way, making sure everyone feels comfortable. I think someone with my background coming from a place of fear, I'm actually really great in this role because I notice right away if someone's nervous or uncomfortable, and I can help kind of coach them through it. So guiding came a little bit out of left field for me, but it ended up being such a blessing in disguise. And I've absolutely enjoyed just watching people grow and flourish. Even helped most recently certify a new dive master. So that was really, really fun to see the progression and the growth there.
What a rewarding process for you.
Thank you. I think so too.
Yeah, and especially like you said, it's got to feel so comforting for clients of yours when they are experiencing fear of any sort to have someone that's can say like, "Oh, I've been there. Here's what I did that worked. Let's practice this with you or see if we can find something that does."
Exactly, exactly. And I think that comes from me wishing that I had more guides like that or more instructors like that when I was kind of going through my courses and going through the ropes. So I tried to take, things that worked really well for me as a student, as well as things I felt might have been lacking or could have been improved on. And I try to use that moving forward on my students and people who come on dives with me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you do a lot of underwater photography as well? Or is that your partner?
I would say, oh, he's an amazing photographer, but I
Yeah,
would say more so as a hobby for me. And it comes from me seeing beautiful underwater photographs, name dropping the same people over and over again, but Tanner takes amazing photographs, and
yeah.
seeing these underwater photos where interactions with wildlife and underwater are captured softly and beautifully, and it just kind of makes you want to jump into the photograph and be there. And that's what I hope to kind of capture and share with everyone. So I would say I'm a very novice underwater photographer, but it is a great passion of mine to be able to capture my dives and then share them with friends, family, anyone else, strangers who are curious about diving, things like that.
They're so fun, but there still is a part of me that when I see you next to a shark, like bigger than you, I still get a little like, oh, this is wild. I get anxious for you.
It is wild. I'm not gonna lie, I still get a little bit anxious to get in the water with them sometimes. I would say it's more of like a nervous excitement.
That's good though,
Um,
right? You don't want to be too calm around them.
you don't want to be too comfortable because
Yeah.
that's when accidents happen. It's like a healthy respect / mild fear. Yeah. But yeah, I still get anxious even when I go on scuba dives. I'm just like an anxious person in general, and that's where a lot of great fundamentals from freediving and breath work and meditation and knowing how to lower your heart rate, that's kind of where all of those play together. Because I tell people all the time, they'll be like, how could you do that? That looks so scary. I do things scared all the time. But the difference is the difference is I try to calm myself down prior. You need to be, especially when you're in the water with apex predators, lowering your heart rate, not being as excited or as nervous is definitely helpful. Sharks in particular have a pretty cool sixth sense, if you will. They have little dots on their nose called ampullae of Lorenzini, and they actually are picking up electrical signals and receptions. It's why they're super attracted to cameras. So if you ever see them swim towards like a GoPro or get really up in the camera, they're really attracted to our cameras. It's why if you're on a shark dive, most operators, all of them should, require you to keep GoPros and cameras on a stick or something that gives you space,
Yeah.
because of those electrical impulses. And similarly, they can detect, if a fish is injured and things like that, which is what it's used for hunting. But they can also detect our heart rates. If our heart rates are spiking, if we're nervous, it doesn't make them want to eat us, but they're definitely going to come a little closer to investigate if they're getting those impulses from us. So I've learned quickly, like the calmer I am, the better of an experience I'm going to have. But I definitely do still get the jitters from time to time.
I'll post some of these photos. I mean, they're just so cool. It's so vast and encompassing, these environments you're swimming in.
Yes, I totally agree.
Oh, I wanted to ask about the women's retreats.
Yes. Oh, I'm so delighted you asked. And Pip, we don't just do women's retreats, we do all kinds of dive travel, but specifically the women's events I've been extra involved in recently.
Yeah.
So Kiki, who is the wonderful one half of Live Freediving, as we spoke about earlier, my boss and just a really good friend, this is her baby, which is amazing. So the whole idea behind it is to get women who love the ocean, who love to dive together, mostly to form connections, to have a great time diving, but also as a woman, it's pretty hard to find dive buddies, right? So if you're a single girl, you're new to the area, who do you go dive with? I mean, typically it's a male-dominated sport. It's going to be a lot of males, which is fine. I've had male dive buddies, but obviously women sometimes tend to be more comfortable diving with random women versus random men. So we've kind of formulated not only these retreats, but also Kiki does monthly women's meetups in Florida as well, just to expand that community, partner people up with dive buddies in the area. And it really is such a beautiful experience. Most recently, we took a group of women, I think there was about 10 of us total, to Mexico. We went to Playa del Carmen, stayed in the most beautiful hotel, infinity pool overlooking the ocean. I mean, it was unreal. I've never stayed in a place like that before. And we went to go swim with the whale sharks. We did daily yoga. I know. And it's such a beautiful experience. I would say the dive trips that Kiki and Frenzel do at Live Freediving are totally unmatched. I've done dive travel before, but never like this. They give you the full local experience, and they really get you close to the wildlife. So I've swam with whale sharks before in Mexico, but in a very touristy way. They partnered with a local dive company, and we could swim with them without the orange life jackets that you have to wear in most cases and things like that. They took us to a whale shark all on our own, no other tourists around or anything. And it was so beautiful. We had tears shed. I know I cried when I saw my first whale shark. And one of the girls even got a whale shark tattoo. So that's how much fun we have on these trips.
That sounds incredible.
It's so much fun. We went skydiving too. It was just a hoot all around.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This is about everything you can do. You guys squeezed into one trip.
We did.
That's the whale shark is my bucket list wildlife. I've never seen one, but those are beautiful, beautiful creatures.
We'll have to go. It will just take your breath away because like they are stunningly beautiful and they are so massive. For your listeners, they're the biggest fish in the sea, quite literally. And while they are classified as a shark, they're big filter feeders. So they eat teeny tiny little planktons up at the surface. So certainly not a threat to us humans, despite their massive size. And like you said, they're just so stunningly beautiful. They look like unicorns of the sea. I mean, they're amazing. And to be face to face with such a big and magnificent creature is not only humbling, but just completely takes your breath away and has moved me to tears. So, yeah. Yeah,
I believe it. I mean, like you said, they're like big Roombas, basically.
Exactly.
Will you humor me for some speed round questions?
I would love to.
Okay, do you drink tea or coffee?
Ooh, coffee. I wish I was a tea drinker, but coffee.
I agree. I love coffee. I think I know the answer to this one already, but cats or dogs?
Oh, okay. Dogs, but I have both. Don't tell my cat.
All right, this one might tear you apart. Scuba or freedive?
Ooh. Oh, I'm gonna go scuba.
Telling all your freedive friends.
I know, I'm like hiding in the group chat.
Yeah. Person, dead or alive, you'd most want to have dinner with?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm between two in my head, but I'm going to go Dr. Eugenie Clark. She helped pioneer shark research in the 1950s, I believe.
That is a perfect answer for you.
She's fascinating. She's done some cool experiments with lemon sharks and things like that. Found that they actually have pretty good memory recall and can recognize human faces, which is cool.
No way.
Mhm.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, now I'll have dinner with her too. Let me know when you set that up.
Party.
Yeah. Do you have any bucket list dive sites still on your to-do list?
Oh, for sure. Two are top of mind. Bucket list dive in general. I would love to swim with the schooling hammerhead sharks. Have you seen dive with? I said swim with, but same.
Yeah.
There's like these massive schools of scalloped hammerheads that migrate, and I would love to be right in the middle of that and watch that happen. Typically, I've seen that in like the Cocos Islands, so there, but there's not much to see there outside of that. So for overall dive site, I would probably say somewhere in French Polynesia. Like, oh, I love a good shallow reef dive, like all the pretty corals and fish and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't need like an 8mm wetsuit.
Yeah.
And how about bucket list underwater life? Is there anything you should have yet to see?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Oh, yes. I actually have never seen in person, except for very far away, but I would love to get up close and personal with a tiger shark.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. I think that they're absolutely fascinating. Fun fact I learned recently about tiger sharks is they can actually turn their entire stomachs inside out, like regurgitate. So they call tiger sharks the garbage cans of the sea because they have found like license plates, tires, all kinds of weird stuff in tiger sharks before. They actually found what they'll do because they typically predate on turtles and things like that with harder shells. They will like eat the turtle and then regurgitate the stomach and the shell. It's absolutely mind-blowing and crazy, and I would love to meet a tiger shark.
Oh my gosh. That sounds like a cartoon. Just vacuum up the meal and then
Just flip
spit it out. Yeah.
That's kind of
Oh
what I
my gosh. And then last one, do you have a favorite shark? Favorite type of shark?
You know, tried and true, I've said it forever, but it still probably stands today as the whale shark.
Yeah. That's a good pick.
I just think they're magnificent. Yes, I'm obsessed. And even though I've gotten to meet them a couple of times, I'd still say they're my celebrity crush of the shark world.
Stevie, how can people follow or support you?
Great question. You can follow me on Instagram. It's at Stevie Wanders with two little underscore. What are those things called?
I'll link it down below too.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
And also, if you follow at Live Freediving, you can book a dive with me. You can join us on a future trip. And again, my DMs are always open if you want to talk sharks, if you want to talk underwater stuff, if you have any questions on how you can help, always available.
Well, thank you so much, Stevie. This was really fun.
Yep, I had so much fun too. I appreciate your time.
That's this episode of Outliers. Thanks so much to Stevie for joining, and thank you for listening. I've linked Stevie's socials in the description below. Be sure to check him out, and make sure to hit follow so you stay tuned for future interviews.